New York City buzzed with perfection the morning Ethan Thompson kissed his fiancée goodbye. Billionaire, CEO, tech golden boy. And in 3 days, he was set to marry Olivia Rothschild, fashion icon, society darling, and everything glossy magazines adored. He walked out of his penthouse with the weight of 10 headlines on his shoulders, and not one of them told the truth. 30 minutes later, a red Ferrari skidded off a coastal road. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire CEO in coma, just days before wedding." But that wasn't the story. Not really. Because while paparazzi crowded outside St. Luke's Hospital and Olivia staged photo-ready visits for the press, something else was happening behind the ICU doors. A woman in scrubs with tired eyes and quiet hands pushed a mop bucket down the corridor. Sarah Miller, cleaning lady, invisible. Until the moment she paused at room 507 and whispered to the man hooked up to a ventilator, "I don't know who you are, but everyone deserves someone who stays." And she stayed, night after night, reading, cleaning, talking, long after the cameras left. What no one saw, what no one cared to see, was how his fingers twitched when she spoke, how his heart monitor calmed when she read The Little Prince. What no one expected was that he'd wake up because of her, not for love, not yet, but for truth, and a voice that didn't ask for anything except to be real. And the real story was only just beginning. Sarah Miller wasn't supposed to be seen. She was the one who emptied trash bins, wiped handrails, and mopped around polished shoes. People passed her in hallways like furniture. But before the uniform, before the mop, she had a dream. Top of her class in nursing school, full scholarship, a future. Then her mother got sick. Medical bills piled up. Sarah worked nights, studied days, and just when things looked like they'd hold, her world collapsed. A doctor falsified documents to cover a mistake. Sarah's mother caught it and tried to speak up. In retaliation, Sarah was framed for forging hospital forms, saving a patient's life, yes, but illegally. Her license was revoked. Her name blacklisted. She dropped out, became a janitor, a ghost in scrubs. And Ethan Thompson was anything but invisible. His face was on magazine covers. His tech empire powered half the city. His suits were tailored to perfection. His smile rehearsed for stockholders. But behind the image was a man chasing shadows, a father who never said, "I'm proud," a brother who wanted his throne, and a fiancée who smiled for cameras more than she ever smiled for him. Olivia Rothschild lived for appearances. She curated her life like an art gallery, expensive, cold, and filled with things that glittered but never glowed. She didn't love Ethan. She loved being seen with Ethan. And Alexander Thompson. He loved only one thing: power. The older brother in the background, watching, waiting. Ethan trusted him, but trust was currency in their world. And Alexander had been trading it for months. None of them saw Sarah coming. None of them knew that the woman who cleaned their floors would soon sweep the truth out from under them, because the coma was only the beginning, and betrayal was already in motion. The crash should have been the worst part, but what happened afterward cut deeper. Ethan lay silent in a hospital bed, tubes snaking from his arms, a ventilator hissing like a slow countdown. Outside, room 507, chaos spun for the cameras, reporters, flowers, press statements from Olivia's publicist. Inside, silence. Olivia arrived at noon sharp each day, never a minute early. She wore black sunglasses and cried just enough for photos. Once the last flashbulb dimmed, she turned to her assistant. "Tell Harper's Bazaar I'll still do the winter cover. Ethan would want me to look strong." She never stayed more than 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Alexander moved swiftly. He brought lawyers and forged Ethan's signature on proxy forms. Just until he recovers, he told the board. But in secret, he was merging Ethan's company with that of a rival, Michael Davis. He was taking everything. And Sarah. She was still there, every night, mopping, dusting, reading aloud. She started to notice things: how Alexander always came late, always left looking smug, how Olivia never touched Ethan unless a photographer was nearby. One night, Sarah sat beside him longer than usual, her voice low, steady. I don't know who to tell, but they're not here for you. Not really. They just want what you have. And if you don't wake up soon, they'll take all of it. As she reached for the light switch, Ethan's fingers moved just barely. But Sarah saw it, and in that moment she realized he might still be in there. And she wasn't just cleaning anymore. She was witnessing a war, and if no one else would fight for him, she would. The doctor said it was nothing. Reflex, they told Sarah. Could be involuntary. But she knew better. Each night after that, she leaned in closer. She read the little print slowly, gently, watching his heart rate monitor like it was whispering back. His brow twitched when she mentioned the fox. His fingers curled ever so slightly when she read the line. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. One night as she adjusted his blanket, she spoke softly, half prayer, half confession. You don't know me, and maybe you never will, but I believe you didn't deserve this, and I'm not going to stop coming. She turned to leave. Wait. The voice was raw, ragged, barely a whisper. Sarah froze. Slowly she turned back. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, glassy, but open. Your voice, he rasped. I know. That voice. Sarah's knees almost gave out. She hit the call button, shouted for help. Nurses rushed in. Alarms beeped. Doctors pushed her aside. But as they worked, Ethan's eyes followed her. Not Olivia, not Alexander. Her. Because in the darkest chapter of his life, she'd been the only steady voice in the silence. The only person who stayed. He didn't know her name yet, but he already trusted her more than anyone. And as the hospital buzzed with news of the miraculous awakening, Sarah stood just outside the doorway, heart pounding. Because deep down she knew the man they thought was saved was about to discover he'd lost everything. And the woman he barely knew. She might be the only one who could help him get it back. Ethan's recovery was slow but steady. He couldn't sit up, yet, couldn't sign his name or remember passwords, but his mind was intact. And the one thing he remembered with startling clarity was her voice. You were here, he told Sarah on the third day after waking. Every night, weren't you? She nodded, eyes down. Only because no one else really was. Olivia came, of course. Hair perfect, designer bag, swinging voice theatrical. Darling, you're awake. Oh, thank God, I've been so lost without you. But Ethan watched her differently now. Her perfume was too strong. Her hands never reached for his, and her visits lasted just long enough for the cameras outside. Alexander arrived too calm, polished, helpful. I've been handling things, little brother. Everything's under control. You just focus on resting. But Ethan didn't trust easy anymore. At night, when the halls quieted and the buzz of machines lulled the world into stillness, Sarah stayed behind. Not as staff, not as nurse, just herself. She brought coffee in cracked mugs, read from the books he never finished, and listened more than she spoke. Why did you stay? He asked once. Her answer was soft. Because when someone's left behind, sometimes it only takes one person to make them feel seen. And slowly Ethan began to see her too, not as the woman who cleaned his floor, but as the only one who hadn't lied. The one who showed up not for wealth or legacy, but because it was right. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan didn't feel lost. He felt found. But some people don't want the lost to be found. And the truth was about to strike back. It happened on a rainy Thursday. Sarah had just refilled Ethan's water pitcher when the door burst open. Olivia stood in the frame, heels sharp, lips red, fury barely masked beneath her designer coat. What is this? She snapped, eyes darting to their joined hands. Why are you holding hands with her? Sarah stepped back, flustered, but Ethan didn't let go. She's the only one who's been honest with me. Olivia laughed coldly. Honest? She's a cleaning woman, Ethan. She's here for a paycheck. Sarah turned to leave, cheeks burning. But Ethan's voice stopped her. She stayed when you didn't. The door slammed. Silence returned. Later that night, Alexander arrived with a folder and a plastic smile. Good to see you up. The board's nervous. We need you to sign temporary voting rights over to me just until you're fully recovered. Ethan flipped through the documents. Everything looked official. Everything felt wrong. You've already been running things, haven't you? He asked. Alexander didn't flinch. You were unconscious. Someone had to. Ethan didn't sign. He didn't argue. He simply said, "Leave the papers." After his brother left, Ethan stared at the folder, jaw clenched. "He's lying," Sarah said quietly. "I know," Ethan replied, "but I need proof." That night, he called Carmen, the retired secretary, who knew where the skeletons were buried, and he turned to Sarah. "I need someone I can trust to help me uncover everything." She didn't hesitate, because trust wasn't given. It was earned when no one was looking, and in the shadows, they would start to fight back. The next few days became a quiet rebellion. Ethan stayed in bed playing the part of a fragile man recovering, but behind closed doors, he was planning a war. Sarah became his second pair of eyes. Every night she jotted down who came to visit, what they whispered in corners, which documents were delivered, which conversations didn't match the smiles. Carmen joined them too, bringing old files from the Thompson family archive, contracts, board memos, sealed correspondence from their father. And as they connected the dots, the betrayal grew uglier. Alexander hadn't just taken temporary control. He had restructured divisions, moved key assets, and was finalizing a merger that would dissolve Ethan's ownership entirely. "He's setting you up to lose everything," Sarah said. "He thinks I'm too weak to stop him," Ethan replied. "Let him think that a little longer." But this wasn't just about revenge. Each late-night meeting brought Ethan and Sarah closer. In the quiet moments between plans and paperwork, they talked, really talked. She told him about her mother, the forged signature that saved Ethan's father's life, the arrest that cost her everything, the pain of being judged for doing the right thing. Ethan listened, really listened for the first time in years. No boardroom, no headlines, no spotlight, just truth. "You've lost more than I ever have," he whispered one night. "Maybe," Sarah said, "but I never lost who I was." Those words lingered in Ethan's chest like a slow-burning fire, because for the first time he saw clearly what he'd never had. Not a company, not applause, but a woman who stayed when everything else fell away. And he wasn't going to let her stand alone again, because the time for hiding was over. The truth deserved its day in the light. The boardroom at Thompson Technologies had never been this full. Executives whispered behind polished oak tables. Reporters hovered outside. Olivia stood near the head of the room in a crisp white suit, every strand of hair in place. Alexander leaned back confidently in his chair, calm as a man seconds away from victory. Then the doors opened, and Ethan walked in. No wheelchair, no IV, no confusion in his eyes. "Thank you all for coming," he said, voice steady. "Before we begin, there's someone I'd like to introduce." The door opened again. Sarah stepped in plain navy scrubs, no makeup, spine straight. Some scoffed, some stared, but she didn't flinch. Ethan nodded and she placed a small recorder on the table. Alexander's voice filled the room. "Once the merger clears, Ethan's just a name. He won't own a thing." Then came video footage provided by Carmen of Alexander, signing off on unauthorized transfers, followed by Olivia on a phone call. "I don't care about his condition. I care about my image." Gasps, murmurs. Olivia's mouth dropped. Alexander shot to his feet. "You set me up. You buried yourself," Ethan said coldly. Then he turned to Sarah in front of them all. "While you plotted behind my back, she stood beside me." "You mean the janitor?" Olivia snapped. "No," Ethan replied. "I mean the only person in this room who told me the truth." Cameras clicked. Board members sat stunned. And in that moment, Sarah, once invisible, became undeniable. Not because she exposed them, but because she did it without ever losing her kindness. But the reckoning wasn't over yet. Justice had been served, but redemption was still waiting. After the meeting, Sarah slipped out quietly. She didn't belong in boardrooms. She wasn't one of them. She'd said what needed saying, shown what needed showing. And now it was time to fade into the background again, where she had always been. But Ethan followed her into the hallway. She turned at the sound of his voice. "Why are you leaving?" "Because that was your world," she said softly. "I just borrowed a moment in it." He shook his head, slowly, deliberately. You didn't borrow anything. You held me together when everyone else wanted me to fall apart. I was just doing what anyone decent would have done. No, Ethan replied, his voice low. You did what no one else did. You stayed. Then, without cameras, without an audience, he reached for her hand. Not with apology, not with pity, but with reverence. You're not invisible to me, Sarah. You never were. At that moment, a few board members stepped into the hallway. Others followed. Whispers rippled as they saw the billionaire holding the cleaning lady's hand without hesitation. He didn't flinch. This woman saved me, Ethan said clearly, and she's the only reason I'm standing here today. And Sarah, for the first time in years, didn't feel ashamed of where she came from. She felt powerful for being exactly who she was. But love wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about choosing each other every day. And for Ethan and Sarah, that choice was just beginning. 3 months later, the hospital garden bloomed, where there used to be just concrete. Ethan stood beneath a simple arch of white jasmine, his tie slightly crooked as heart, steady in a way it had never been in boardrooms or business deals. There was no orchestra, no society press, no Vera Wang gown, just soft laughter, folded chairs, and a path of petals that led to the woman who changed everything. Sarah walked toward him in a modest blue dress, her mother by her side, her hand steady on Rose's recovering arm. The guests weren't CEOs or socialites. They were nurses, janitors, former patients, Carmen in a floral dress, and even a few children Ethan had sponsored quietly in the months since he woke. When Sarah reached him, Ethan whispered, "You look like the first good thing that's ever happened to me." She smiled. "You look like someone who finally sees what matters." They didn't exchange vows about power or promises they couldn't keep. They simply said, "Thank you for staying." And in the hospital where he once lay forgotten, Ethan Thompson married the woman who refused to forget him. Not because she wanted his empire, but because she believed he still had a heart worth saving. And now together they'd build a life not made of money, but of meaning. A new plaque now hangs in the Thompson Technologies lobby, right beside the late founder's portrait. It doesn't list quarterly profits or acquisitions. It reads, "Success isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in lives touched, dignity restored, and the courage to choose love when it's hardest." Ethan Thompson rebuilt his empire not with lawyers, but with honesty. And Sarah, she didn't just walk beside him. She taught him how to stand. The woman who once scrubbed floors in silence now co-directs the Thompson Foundation, investing in nursing scholarships, patient advocacy, and giving voices back to those who'd been ignored too long. People still whispered about their beginning, their difference, their story. But Ethan never flinched again, because he knew the truth. He wasn't saved by a strategy. He was saved by a woman who stayed. And in a world obsessed with appearance, she reminded him and all of us that the most powerful love stories don't need wealth or status to matter. They just need one person brave enough to care. Don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Black Voices for more emotional and powerful Black stories that matter.